I had to because I constantly go through, I constantly go back and I constantly go over what have I done to get to this point. And not to say that this point in my life is not a success, because I have friends who have not achieved things that I've achieved. I know people who didn't have the luxuries that I've had in my life, and it always is so upsetting when you feel a certain way about something, and you feel like you can't feel that way because you have to constantly look at the fact that you were in a better position than most. So it's unfair to have emotions about something you feel might be either unfair or might be like wrong in your life or whatever. Um, but in my life, I've noticed that there was a point, I want to say, there was a point in my life where I went from being decently okay, and it's not even like I could have known any better, but there was a point where I went from decently okay to feeling like every day has just been like just a nightmare. And it's not to say like, oh, like a nightmare, like I'm in just such a detriment that my whole life is gonna blow up. But the sad part that I feel is that I don't know where I lost the spark. And in my going back through my life in the best way that I can, I always equate it to right around the time, I want to say 7, 8. I blame I because I have to point a finger, because pointing inwards is like everybody's like, oh well, if you gotta point the finger, point it at yourself, and I'm like, so I gotta blame my 6 year old or 7 year old non-knowing about life self as to why I'm in the predicament I'm in now. Like, it's the fault of a child that I'm like this way that I am now. It's a little unfair. But I realized that a very long time ago, I used to be very into and very like willing to lean into things that I enjoyed. And while I still do that in some way, shape, or form now, it's not in the same level of intensity that I feel like I used to have when I was much, much younger. I can't blame everybody around me, but in going back numerous times, I looked at ways that I grew up and how I, as a child, learned to defend against certain situations. And most of the time, that defense usually was, I'm not going to do it anymore because if I don't do anything, I don't get in trouble. So a little part of me says, if I just quit trying to do things that I want to do, then hopefully the things that are making me upset will quit, which it didn't, but would quit in that. But then looking back on my recent years, I just realized that in me creating that mindset and that narrative for me to try to like not do things that I should be like going for, I think it created a personality that was needy and unwilling to take charge in situations because of the fear that I would return to the solitude that I constantly was in. And in more recent years, it felt like the way that I'm reacting to situations now, I should have been doing when I was younger so that I could learn about how to navigate it better now that I'm older and kind of have like the naivety that I suffer from at times kind of quenched so that my decision making would have been better. Long story short, while I'm in a moderately comfortable situation right now, I'm also just as stressed as if I wasn't. And it's partially, if not mostly, thanks to me because I just, I think, well, it's not even that I think, I know. I have a very, very unrelenting temper that I don't display because it does not do anything for anybody, including myself. And the thing I realized is that in situations where I really, really feel slighted after the numerous years of me having to deal with a parent that literally had issues, I'd say, all over the place, and that didn't understand how to even talk or deal with me, especially in my times of like stress or whatever, and only resorted to blind anger and loud screaming and yelling to get their point across because in many ways they were just as childish as the child they were attempting to raise. Which you could blame their situation, you can blame the fact that maybe their life wasn't that great. I would not care less because in my mind, it just makes me think if you are to sit here and tell me that at the age of 30 and above, that you will sit there and treat a child to the extent of acting as if they do not have ears or emotions, and you just scream at them in your blind rage, and then decide 20 to 30 minutes to a day later that you're gonna belly up to them as if you never came into someone's face with such belligerent, unadulterated anger and animosity, and try to turn that into, haha, well, I was just angry, so, forgive me for being a shit. Like, what do you think? How do you think somebody's gonna, like, discern that? You think being a shit in the moment because you're upset dictates that you should just automatically get a pass because, oh, you got emotional issues? Fuck that. Suck it the fuck up and talk like a normal person. And if you gotta scream at somebody because you don't think that they're gonna hear what you're saying, fuck out of here. Then that's why you have to scream. Because what you're saying is irrelevant and dumb. What you're saying is personal problems that you need to deal with your fucking self. Instead of taking that shit out on other people because you feel slighted. Thus returning to how I handle situations, which is exactly that. I feel slighted. I decide to take it into my own hands. And when I take it into my own hands, it comes off that I'm being disrespectful. I'm being belligerent. I'm being callous. And I try to do my best to not be like what I've grown up seeing. Because that's all I knew. All I knew is you want to get your way, scream your way into it. Do whatever and say whatever you gotta say to make it look like you are the absolute correct force in the argument. Regardless of how terrible you've been being, regardless of how much microaggressions you've been throwing, latent disrespect, poor choice of words and bad choice of language, thinking that because you're supposed to be the authority, you can talk any kind of way. I feel like I have an issue with authority. I know I do. But because I have an issue with authority, when somebody feels like they want to be the authority in my life and I don't give them the satisfaction of even remotely having any form of power over me, it's like something inside of them just decides to just burn up. And they have to do whatever the fuck it takes to take me down, whatever notch they want to take me down to bring me down to some level so that they can laugh and say, oh, you're just like me. See, all it took was me killing your family and spitting on your name and making sure the whole town thinks you're a heathen so that I could prove to you that you're just like me. Ha ha. I find myself in a predicament that I've found myself in numerous times because I didn't speak up, because I didn't say what I was supposed to say. I find myself every time I think about what kind of person I am and what kind of person I try to be, I just realized that the person that I am is somebody that's so violently angry because I have done nothing but wait and patiently listen to every wrong application of decision making that everyone else has told me in hopes that I will at some point get it right. And it's not to sit here and say that some of these decisions aren't my fault for being very, very terrible with self-control and money. Something that I think at a young age you should learn about through whatever means necessary. But I think in the time span of me being a young person, I was spending more time learning how to not piss people off and not get in trouble, so then hopefully not basically get either on punishment or basically get an ass whooping for just not doing specific tasks. I spent so much time trying to be the person that doesn't ruffle feathers and doesn't do what I would want, but does what everybody else would want. And I didn't have time to even remotely work on these actual bad habits that I've had that never really came into play until something serious like my life happens. And now I'm living and I'm trying to get another job and I'm trying to do the same thing that I've been doing successfully and I feel like unsuccessfully for the last 10 years of my life. Get a job. Find out the job's terrible. Somebody treats me like shit on the job, I don't take their shit. I start moving different. Now the job realizes, oh, we can't whip this kid anymore. He's not gonna get us coffee when we ask him anymore. So now we're just gonna start fucking treating him like shit. Okay, now I'm just gonna start acting like I don't give a fuck about y'all. Oh, he's not about the company, so let's start phasing him out. Let's start figuring ways to hopefully get him to not want to work here anymore. Let's be terrible to him. Let's figure out any which way. And it's always somebody who I feel like is just butt hurt. Like I said, it's my fault too. I can't act like I haven't done things that frankly I deserved. Because instead of me going towards the things I should be going towards in life and fighting for the things I actually care about, I'm fighting to just have a job. I'm fighting to just make enough money to pay my rent. There's no passion behind anything that I'm doing. There's no victory, there's no loss. It's just go in, do the job that you're supposed to do, and go home. That's it. There's no pride. There's no pride, there's no competition. There's no victory. It's just going about the motions until inevitably I'd be dead. So my wisdom Wednesday is, or my wisdom for this Wednesday, you really have to look back. Look back at everything that you have ever done in your life. And when you look back, tell yourself, were the people around you actually helping you? Were the decisions you making or you made actually good ones? Are you actually gonna be safe? Are you even moving towards something that you want? Because if you can't find something to lean into, then somebody's gonna walk all over you for the rest of your life. And in this world of doormats and masochists and sadists who generally are wealthy, you can be a doormat for long enough to be able to say that you're not a doormat anymore for slightly more money. Or you could do something, like in my case, that hopefully would affect and help other people and get shoved out. Or you could do what I also have done, which is allow yourself to be comfortable, do things that are moderately, if not extensively selfish, and not actually care about what you're doing at all. To the point where when you feel like you're actually at your most comfortable is when you're actually right on the cusp of being taken out. And once that happens, you have to start all the way over again. Figure out your life.